Yeah,
What's
it
your
is.
thoughts, bro, on quarterback? Because everybody on here knows, like, they know my thoughts on the quarterback position, right? What are your thoughts on quarterback? Because I'll say this: I go into different drafts, and sometimes I'm surprised. I'm literally surprised with like who's available, and then other times I'm like, damn, like I got to get a quarterback now.
So are we talking like super flex or just like in general?
Just in
Or
general, just in general.
so how I look at the quarterback position for me personally, like I want an elite difference maker. If I can get them. Now, there are players around the range, like super flex that I might take over a quarterback where they're currently going. But I want a difference maker. And for me, I think that there's like potentially 7 people this year, 7 quarterbacks that can be QB1 overall. So, like, I don't mind paying a premium price for some of them, like, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts type of players. But if I miss out on like those 7, kind of where they're going, then I just wait for like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, guys like that I really like going later.
Yeah, it's tough, man, because I feel like there's value at the top. Like there's a few guys that could be like the top quarterback one, but then I feel like there's a bunch of other just kind of guys in a similar tier where we see the upside. Maybe they won't finish QB1, but they could be a quarterback one for your team on a weekly basis. So that's kind of the difficulty for me. And I feel like early on you got to pass on players that are kind of studs for your team. We just drafted on your page. I felt really good about how my draft turned out with a bunch of like top heavy starters as opposed to top heavy quarterbacks. I don't know if you had a chance to see that or if your thoughts on that. What do you think about that strategy in Superflex?
So I agree. There's just a couple quarterbacks. Who did you? I don't even remember who you ended up with.
I
Who were
ended
your
up with
quarterbacks?
the draft. It was I had two running backs. It was Saquon and CMC were my top two picks. Then I had receivers were Devontae Adams, Mike Evans, Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen, the old guys. I ended up getting a couple other running backs, and my quarterbacks ended up being Geno and Baker.
So there was just one point where Trevor was still on the board that I would have taken. I don't know who you ended up taking over Trevor,
I think
but
it was
just
Keenan Allen. Keenan
was it
Allen.
Keenan? Yeah, for
Yeah.
me personally, I would have taken Trevor. But I mean, I do think it's not bad to wait. I do think there's a certain point where if there's certain quarterbacks on the board, because we kind of talked about this earlier, there's just tiers, right? When like if it's best when you draft in tiers, and like the quarterback position, once in my opinion, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Jaden Daniels, like those kind of guys are off the board. I think it's like top 15 guys for me. Then it's
Yeah.
kind of I don't mind waiting even a little bit longer because there's some guys that are going a little bit later that I like. So it just depends on the tiers, but that's one thing I would have done differently looking at your team, I remember, but, I mean, it was pretty solid overall.
Yeah. No, I felt good about it. All right, here we go. Let's get this thing going. I had to turn off this sound. All right. I think I turned it off. Hopefully I turned it off. For whatever reason, it like blacks out the whole top of my the screen, so I can't even see. Like you see that? It's like thrown, it's like blocked off up here.
Oh, right there, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. So I think I tapped the sound. Hopefully, I know the sound can get annoying sometimes. No, I didn't. Let me see if I can find it. Hopefully that worked.
Alright, so we got CMC and CD, huh?
Let's go. He said, "Let me in, Ryan. What's good with you, bro? Yeet man, what's popping? What's popping, man? Appreciate you joining. See, it's a little different than this is Superflex, by the way. 12 team Superflex.
I mean, I'm going Josh.
Abel, what's good, Brody? You got him in the middle. I ain't mad at that. What's good, Brody? Do people know this is Superflex? That's always the struggle. It's like when you go into your drafts, you got to adjust. So, two QBs, yes, this is a Superflex draft. Superflex. Is Lad McConkey more likely to be Keenan Allen or Keon Coleman, Stephon Diggs? So that's an interesting. Did I not add the quarterback spot? Is that what happened? Because we might have to restart this thing. Did I not add the
No,
quarterback
yeah,
spot?
you didn't.
All right.
No.
Let me see if I can pause the draft here. Pause the draft.
I mean, you did make it super flex because the quarterbacks are at the top, but yeah, there's no
Let's start it back. And I got to add the position. Let's see if I can add it. There we go. 3 receivers. We'll take out the flex. We'll just leave it super flex. All right. The draft has been updated. Good to go. Starting back at the top. But is Ladd McConkey more likely to be the next Keenan Allen, or is Keon Coleman the next Stephon Diggs? I think to be honest, I subscribe more to the Keon Coleman, Stephon Diggs. I don't think they're comparable players, but I think rolling the offense, we can expect more out of Keon Coleman than Diggs, in my opinion. The team, obviously, you wouldn't get Curtis Samuel to kind of be the pass catcher slot guy. You have Dalton Kincaid, who you drafted last year, but Keon Coleman has the prototypical size that you want to see, and really would be a guy, in my opinion. They went up and got this guy in the top of the second round to lean on him. So I think Ladd McConkey's cool, just in a different offense. Maybe we see a different Ladd McConkey, but I'm not a big fan of that Greg Roman offense when it comes to the passing game.
Ooh, I got a tough decision. I'm probably just gonna go. I'll still go Lamar.
Lamar, how you feeling about that? You like Ladd more? Or you like Keon Coleman more?
I personally, so I guess kind of like the question is Ladd more. I just feel like Ladd's probably fits better to be Keenan Allen, I guess, to kind of answer the question, than like Keon Coleman, like you said, to beat Diggs. But I don't think that either one of them is kind of like I I question how good they're gonna be, just because in college they weren't guys like what I like to see in college wide receivers coming out are guys who are able to command a large target share in college, because that kind of translate where neither one of these guys did. So I don't know how well they're gonna do, but I do think Keon Coleman could be a power slot. But then also you like look at that offense and you have Dalton Kincaid, who's going to be, basically a slot receiver. You have Curtis Samuel, who's a slot receiver. You have Khalil Shakir, who is a slot receiver. So, like, I worry that they're just going to put Coleman out there on the outside. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. So, if I had to answer the question, I'd probably just say Ladd is closer to Keenan Allen than Keenan Coleman's the Diggs, personally.
All right.
But I don't really like either or personally.
Yeah,
all right. So why I'm just going to explain why I went Lamar there. I was really considering going, since this is 3 wide receivers, I was really considering going CeeDee Lamb there. But I just think like Lamar could potentially be QB1 overall in fantasy football. He has that ceiling. We've seen him. And, a guy who can put up 40 points, even 50 points in a single week and just single-handedly win your week. Now, if I was on the clock and Lamar was gone, maybe I would have went with Anthony Richardson, but I probably would have just went with CeeDee Lamb instead. So, yeah.
I don't mind it. And, I think getting a quarterback, especially when you don't know how the rest of the draft is going to go out right there in the middle rounds, is always, you kind of playing the fence there just in case there's a run. But there's we've talked about quarterbacks extensively today. I just feel like there's so much value at the quarterback position this year. I don't mind it. CeeDee Lamb, that's one of the more interesting things. Jamar Chase was the first receiver off the board in our draft, but typically it's like Tyreek or CD. What's your thoughts on those guys? Like, do you have a preference for one over the other?
Not really. I don't like, they're 2 guys that, once again, like if I had to draft 10 times, I'd have 5. Like if I only have 1 draft, who would I go? Probably CD, just because he's younger and like was wide receiver 1 last year. He was really fantastic the year before, but Dak got hurt. So, Dak staying healthy, we've seen what his true ceiling is. So I do like CD quite a bit.
Yeah, I like CD. The only thing that's starting to concern me with CD, like I was going through yesterday talking Tyreek Hill versus CeeDee Lamb. And the one thing that's starting to concern me now is the contract stuff with him. Like, is he going to hold out? Is he going to be there, till preseason? Is he going to play in the preseason and get some training camp reps in? So you don't want him to be slow to start the season again, even though last year worked out. It's just typically we've seen that end in, sometimes it has injuries or it takes him more than just like 4 or 5 games to get going. So that's Tyreek. We know last year he was on that 2,000-yard pace until the end of the year when he had the injury. So
no, and it is early, and as long as if we get in the training camp and he is not there, then I would probably go with Tyreek Hill. I'd lean Tyreek Hill. But if training camp starts in a month and he is there or whatever, starts in a few weeks, and he's there, I would go with him.
Chad, who y'all like? Who y'all like? CD or Tyreek? Who y'all rocking with? Or Jamar Chase? Shit, Jamar Chase
I
is
love Jamar Chase.
that you still like him even after last year? I'm like, bro, he's had one top 5 season. One.
But the problem last year wasn't fair. Like, we started to see it,
Here we
had the
go.
50-point week. Burrow was hurt
Here
literally
we
like the
go.
entire
It's always
season.
excuses.
But
It's always
but
excuses
it's
for
the
Jamar
same.
Chase.
Here's the thing: is that were you big on CD Lamb last year? Probably
Yeah,
not as big
I
as
kind
you
of
should have
not
been.
top 5, but yeah, I like
Yeah,
CD Lamb.
he was in my top 5, and a lot of people would come into my chats and they say, "Oh my gosh, there's no way." But the thing is that he has top 5 upside. We've already seen that out of him. Like, we know that, and Jamar Chase has top 5 upside. Like, he put up 50 points in 1 week. There's only a few wide receivers that can truly do that in one season. Damn it, I'm gonna go ETN. I was kind of looking at the board here. Actually, I should have went with Olave.
Yeah,
Why I would have went with Olave is just because it is 3 wide receivers, though. Like, that's
yeah,
one thing. But it is only one flex too, so that's one thing I gotta consider here.
yeah.
Damn, and Devon Achane was still on the board. No,
Your boy for
I wasn't paying
RB1.
attention.
RB1. I just think Chase. I'm like, Chase, what's the upside with Chase, right? Like we
Wide
haven't
receiver
seen we
1.
haven't seen the year yet. We haven't seen the year yet. But
But
does
it
Chase
doesn't happen
no,
until they do it.
does he have 1,700-yard upside?
Easy.
Hell no, he doesn't. He don't got 1,700-yard upside.
Easy.
No, he doesn't. Not on a weekly basis. T. Higgins is too involved in the offense.
T.
And Joe
Higgins
Burrow can't stay
is
healthy.
T. Higgins. T. Higgins is not T. Higgins. I would argue that Jalen Waddle is better than T. Higgins. So the fact that we like Tyreek Hill so much, and we love Tyreek Hill, he can be wide receiver 1. Like, what's stopping Jamar Chase? And people will be like, well, he's not Tyreek Hill. I mean, I would argue he's right on par with Tyreek Hill. It just hasn't materialized in the season because Burrow's been banged up or Chase has been banged up. And just like last year with CD Lamb, if we got a full healthy Dak for a season, which we did, CD Lamb was wide receiver 1. Jamar Chase has these skill set. There's no question in the world Jamar Chase does not have the skill set to be the wide receiver 1 overall in fantasy football. We just need a full healthy season out of him and a full healthy season out of Burrow. Does that ever happen? I don't know. But if it happens, 100% he has the skill set to be wide receiver 1 in fantasy football
So
overall.
that's where I guess my biggest issue with this, because when you take Jamar Chase, you're assuming that he stays healthy, that everything is right, that he hits the ceiling. Because if he doesn't hit the ceiling, he's barely been top 5. So to me, that's the risk reward for that. When we know Tyreek Hill's a top 5 guy, we know Justin Jefferson's a top 5 guy no matter what. We know CD Lamb now is up there. I don't see. We know St. Brown is a top 5 to 6 guy every single year. I just don't see the upside with taking Chase. I just don't.
I will say, like, it also depends on what Joe Burrow looks like in training camp. Like, if he's not healthy quite yet, I mean, I'm out on Jamar Chase. But I also think that he'll fall down the boards. People will react appropriately to that. Like, no, because one big thing I learned last year is just like calf strains are no joke. And Joe Burrow was not right at the beginning. He was horrible to start the season last year. So calf strains are no joke for quarterbacks. I would even say any position. So, but
He
I
should
kind
have
of learned
listened
my
to his
lesson there.
boy. He should have listened to Browning, or not to Jamar Chase, and let him go with Browning, because I think if
Yeah.
Burrow would have took those first 5 weeks off and just got right, it would have been a whole different team.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I agree. I don't think he should have been playing in the beginning, but I think that's, I mean, shit happens. And I think the team should have also just been up front and just kind of held him back a little bit too. I do think it hurt him there.
yeah.
Put him
Thoughts
in
on Bo
bad
Nix?
risk too.
Yeah,
He
and
was
the
getting
risk
he
now.
was getting crushed early in the season. That was bad.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see. I don't know. Joe Burrow he's had trouble staying healthy just in general. But thoughts on Bo Nix? I'm hearing he's got an arm. Do you like Jaden Daniels' rushing upside? To answer the second part, Jaden Daniels, I think Tyler and I both agree, love the rushing upside there. The potential for him is through the roof. Does it stick? And then on Bo Nix, yes, he's got the arm. Yes, he fits the Sean Payton pedigree, has the accuracy that you want to see. But it wouldn't surprise me to see him wait a couple weeks. There, 3-4 weeks into the season before we get to see Bo Nix.
Yeah,
You on
and
the same page with that?
yeah, and I mean, like, for fantasy purposes, I'm not really like, if it's super flex, then sure. But like in one quarterback leagues, I mean, I have no interest in him
Yeah,
whatsoever.
yeah.
But Jane Daniels, yes.
Tyreek over CD, easy money. I don't know if it's easy money. Chase is my favorite out of the three this year. Ayuk
Oh,
or this must be a guy, somebody from your channel, huh? Somebody from your page. Loving Jamar Chase, huh? Ayuk or Olave? It's a really good question, and to me, I think the answer is clear, but it's funny because they're both kind of drafted around the same spot. And I know Ayuk's going through like contract stuff, going through obviously some stuff where he could potentially be traded. But I just don't see the upside with Chris Olave. The upside for Chris Olave is like Brandon Ayuk's season last year, in my opinion. That's like top upside for me with him. He's had the same season back to back years. I know the offense is going to look a little different this year, but it's the same quarterback with Derek Carr, same weapons around him. So where do we get Olave? Like, where does he increase? Does he get more catches? Does he get more TDs? Like, what's the win with Olave?
all right, I'll play devil's advocate, even though I agree with you. Well, one thing I will say is like, what if training camp starts and still Ayuk hasn't signed or anything? Like, would that start to?
Yeah, then I got to move him down a little bit. Same
Yeah,
thing with C. It's kind of how we talked about with CD. The
yeah.
worries that then I would move him down a little bit.
Especially as we get through, continues through camp, and now we're getting into August, and it's like, I don't like like that's kind of stuff. I really hate players like that. For not hate them just for fantasy football purposes, but I'll play devil's advocate. Say
Right,
say Brandon Ayuk does sign, right? My question for it, and I kind of do question this, but I just think he's a fantastic player. But I also think Chris Olave is a fantastic player. Does it go up for Brandon Ayuk off of last season? I mean, he's been right around like 115 targets. He's probably never going to be, 140 plus, which Chris Olave was last year, 135. So he could push to see a little bit more targets because also I think he might have missed the game or something last year. I don't know. Maybe he played full season. But another year in that offense for Chris Olave. Well, a brand new OC, which I don't know, it could go up a little bit, but he's the undisputed number one, can get more targets than Brandon Ayuk. So I guess my question would be just, does it go up for Brandon Ayuk, which he was the top 10 wide receiver last year? That's fine. Or back end wide receiver one, basically, which is good. But does it get better?
right.
That's kind of the question for him. Where could it get better for Chris Olave? I mean, I'll say for the purposes of this argument, yeah, because he is the undisputed number one. Could catch more touchdowns than four, hopefully. Um,
You would hope, right?
you would hope, but yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Olave will get more targets. It's just where do the targets come from? I think we've talked about this before, JSC. It's just I don't know where the extra targets come from. Is Derek Carr just going to throw more this year? Is he going to be a different quarterback? Like this, it's the same crew. So I just don't see that part. Now, I was looking, I got some messages from the chat, Sleeper, right? One of them said punting quarterback and super flex. And so I've talked about this, or whoever Speed Nash is, I've talked about this at length. I feel like I can find guys in the middle rounds that'll give me QB1 output. So if you're concerned about that, I get going and getting at least one elite quarterback. But I don't think getting two guys in the top 24 is punting the position. That would be like if I'm punting the position or just going zero QB, that would mean like getting somebody that's outside of the top 24. I'm going to get two starting caliber quarterbacks, and I don't think that's punting the position at all.
One thing I will say, I mean, I like that team right there with Jaden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence. I think that
Yes.
from the super flex mocks that I've kind of done, if I'm not getting an elite guy, right, like Lamar, who can easily be quarterback one, be 20 plus fantasy points per game, easy top three kind of guy. Like then I like to wait on the quarterback, like my QB2, like what I'm doing right now. I don't really mind who my quarterback two is because I feel like I can stream my quarterback two and quarterback three, and it's as good as value compared to like just waiting on the position like this guy did over here with the Jaden Daniels, Trevor Lawrence. But I do think if you're going to wait on quarterback and not get an elite guy, get a guy who's closer to like 10, a back end quarterback one, high end quarterback two. I would get my quarterback two personally a little bit earlier compared to those other guys, like how the top five guys really waited on their quarterback two,
Yep.
and try to get one of those guys inside the top 15 because what that guy did right there, the Jane Daniels, Trevor Lawrence, like I think the fifth round from what I've seen is kind of like the cutoff where the last top 15 guys kind of get taken. So personally, I would do that. But if you get in a super elite guy, I would just kind of wait on your quarterback too. And
Yeah, it's funny. He said he
but
wanted Goff, and I was hoping that Trevor Lawrence would come to me. So we are both kind of wanting the opposite thing, but it worked. I think his team looks pretty good right now,
I
depending
like
on
his
how it
team a lot,
finishes.
honestly.
Depends on how it finishes with every draft. Justin, can you convince me to change my home league from ESPN to
Oh, this is
Sleeper?
Landon. What's
You know,
up,
Landon,
Landon?
hey, I will convince you. ESPN is trash. The interface is trash.
That's what I keep telling them. The
It's trash.
Sleeper has the best interface in my opinion. Now, I do think that there's like a little bit of a learning curve because it's different than the other apps. And like how you work through it is a lot different than kind of like your standard ESPN and Yahoo where everything's like just at the top where you flow through things. But like the league chat feature for Sleeper is just, especially if you're not real life friends, the league chat Sleeper for what Sleeper has is just it's honestly the best feature in my opinion across all the apps, like
Yep.
how you just talk to people and you're able to work through chats, and then you have the private
The
DMs where you can
DMs, yeah.
privately message the people, and also, like, the trades stay there too, so you're just able to see what the trade history's been like. I just think it's, like, easily the best app. I agree with you.
Yeah, ADP, and I just like how you can play the different formats. Like with Yahoo and ESPN, it's so tough sometimes to like change your rankings and change your settings and change the rules. Like, and I just think Sleeper to me is it's clean. The mock draft lobby is easy, it's workable. So I've always found that this is like it seems to be the best platform for Dynasty too. Like I don't even
Oh,
know if you could
Dynasty
do Dynasty
100%.
on Yahoo.
You
So
can, but it's nowhere near as good as Sleeper. Sleeper is so much better.
yeah, Sleeper's better. Sleeper's the best for me in my opinion. Start bench cut Jordans, Balenciagas, and Air Force Ones. Never Balenciagas. I ain't paying that much for anything clothing related. Who y'all favorite tight ends to draft when y'all doing mocks? This is actually a good one. So, do you have like before I get into mine? Do you have a tight end that you feel like you always end up getting in your mock drafts?
Kyle Pitts. Still believing. Also, I just think this is the year to take him, and he honestly goes the cheapest that he really has been going for the biggest quarterback upgrade he's had since he came into the league. So, like, the fact that you can get him late 5th, sometimes even, like, beginning of 6th round, I just really like him in that range. I went with Kelsey here just because I still think Kelsey can be tight end 1.
Yeah.
And, like, where he was going here, I didn't mind the value. I don't really like taking Kelsey early 3rd, and for me, this is more like 4th round where I got him, so, but if I wait in the position to, like, I'll just go, like, Pat Freiermuth later, or I'll just kinda, like, punt the position because tight end is always a position that you can find guys throughout the years to fill voids and, if you miss on elite guys, so, like, that's usually how I approach it.
Yeah, I like a lot of the tight ends. Like I like McBride a lot. I like
Yeah.
Laporta a lot. Like I
I think
like
there's some really good elite tight ends.
there are, but I just don't feel like the need. Like there's such a big drop off after the starters go, in my opinion. Like the wide receiver 30s and the running back like 25 to 30 range is such a stark drop off that I'm like I want to try to get as many of those players as possible before I address the tight end position, which I feel like there's about 10 guys that can all be kind of in the same range. Like
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me if Kyle Pitts was a top 3 tight end. It wouldn't surprise me if Dalton Kincaid was a top 3 guy. It wouldn't surprise me if George Kittle, who's been a top 5 tight end every year of his career, was still a top 5 guy. So I just don't really feel the need to do that. And then the player I feel like I always end up getting, tell me what you think about him too. Dallas Goddard. He goes outside the top
Yeah.
10, new offense, obviously with Kellen Moore, but he's consistently been a top 5 guy outside the years he's been hurt. He's broke his forearm, I don't know how many times. But like I think he's been penalized a little too much. And so he's going outside the top 10. I like getting him a little bit later in the draft.
No, that's a good one, and kind of going back to what you said, how you like going those, top 30, top 25 wide receivers. That's also why I like Kyle Pitts because 'cause we've talked about this before where there's like a tier break, in my opinion, personally, in the 5th round, and Pitts always goes outside of that tier break where you just have to decide, like, between, DeAndre Swift and, like, Aaron Jones,
Yeah.
like, guys like that, Keenan Allen. I'm not the biggest Keenan Allen fan this year, so, like, I'd rather take Kyle Pitts in that range, who I do think can be a top 3 tight end and potentially, like, if things go right and Kirk is Kirk, he could potentially challenge the tight end 1 spot, and it's going the latest out of those elite guys. So, but a guy like you said, Dallas Goedert honestly goes pretty late too. So I don't mind that as well.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's weird because it's like you have to go through and drafts are different. Like so sometimes you'll see like Kelsey will be the first tight end off the board. I kind of like if McBride is the third one there, I might reach on him at that point, or like in this draft,
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts went super late. Him and
He
Kittle for
did go
whatever
really
reason,
late.
they go
Yeah.
really late. So it all just depends on who's
And
available at the time.
Superflex gets a little weird too. Like
Yeah.
your regular rankings when people are doing one quarterback leagues, like it's pretty ADP. Like the quarterbacks really mess
Yes.
with the ADP with a lot of these players. So guys will typically go a little bit later. Oh damn, I didn't even take my quarterback. Oh well, it doesn't matter.
You'll
Last
get
two
him.
rounds, take my
You'll get
quarterback.
Drake May.
I was kind of hoping to get a better quarterback too than Drake May, but
You will.
I wasn't paying attention. There's still some decent guys on the board.
Let's see here. And I'll go Tajay for some upside. But yeah, this, I feel like at the end of the day, oh, you did snipe. Yeah, that is funny. Yeatman said I tried to snipe you. You actually you sniped me a couple times with Goddard. You got Ridley. You got some of my guys too. But that's one thing. Like Yeatman's come on here. You said, where were you at? Someone likes my team. I don't. A lot of times you get guys that are like Malik Neighbors. How do you feel about Dynasty? Like kind of coming into redraft because I notice a lot of people, will take the newer names, the Keon Coleman, Lad McConkey, and their whole team will be like all players that are like 3 years or less in the league. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's just way too risky.
No, it is, and sometimes it is because I'm in a lot of dynasty leagues, so I really like dynasty, and it is at times a little difficult to get out of that dynasty mindset and get back into the redraft mindset. Um, but like you also have to take into consideration that rookie players are sometimes some of the best players in the draft for later in the season when it comes down to winning your leagues, just because those rookies, your good ones, start to really get acclimated
Good
and
point.
their points per game go up. And Jaden Reed and Rashee Rice last year from weeks 10 through 17, they're top 10 wide receivers because that's
Yes.
just what happens. They were up at 17, almost 18 points per game, both of them. And that's what happens in like I think that Malik right now, compared to where he was going in best ball, like best ball, he was going early third, sometimes the back end of the second. For me,
Yeah.
that's way too rich. But like now he's starting to get to a spot where I do think it's palatable for like a fourth round pick for a guy who just has like he's on par with in terms of a prospect. He's on par with Marvin Harrison. Now he's going to a much worse situation, but he's just should be such a good real life NFL player that I don't know, anything can happen. I think he's gonna be heavily targeted. Just comes down to, like, are those targets gonna be catchable, really?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. Do you like Monty, Najee, or Zamir White? I feel like they're all kind of similar tier to me. If I had to pick one, I'm picking Najee. I just think
Yeah,
there's more upside there.
I would take Montgomery last out of them. I actually went with Montgomery. I forgot my boy Jonathan Brooks was still on the board, but I just think Monty, like, he was getting his work taken away towards the end of last season by Gibbs. I just feel like he has the lowest upside out of those guys, unless Gibbs gets hurt. Then, I mean, he can be a league winner, but yeah.
All right. Well, the draft is over. Any team stand out to you, my man?
I mean, I did really like Team 11 just because I really like the quarterbacks. And we kind of talked about this earlier. I mean, I really like Jane Daniels and Trevor Lawrence. I really think those guys can be top 10 guys. And Jane Daniels could push to be a top 5 guy this year just because the rushing upside. So, I mean, I would have preferred, I know this isn't a full draft. Usually
Right.
full drafts are like 15 rounds. So I'm assuming he would have gotten his quarterback 3. But I mean, other than that, I think it's a really, even like the first 3 rounds, I think those are really solid players that pair up with those quarterbacks. So I really
Yeah,
like
he
it
did good.
personally.
Norm, this is one of those guys. Yeet Man's one of my guys who takes all the younger players. So I'm proud of you, man. Proud of the development. The draft I liked the most was this one right here. Started off really strong, in my opinion, getting Mahomes, Taylor, London, Diggs, Cup, Kincaid, just a lot of value where at the top there. It kind of went off of my personal strategy later on, but I thought at the top of this draft, he was doing really, really well for himself. So I thought this was one of the stronger starts. Your team looks decent. I think you just need your receivers and your RB2 to hit. You need that to hit in a
I
big
like
way.
my wide receivers a lot. But yeah, I mean, my RB2, I waited quite a bit. Um, I was considering instead of Jaden Reed going Najee, but also I was like, this is 3 wide receivers, so the wide
Yep.
receivers got a little bit more, um, you know, value than your running back. So, and we've also kind of talked about this too. Like, you can find solid or RB2s throughout the year. Wide receivers, especially later in the season, is impossible to
It's
find. So,
tough. So
yeah.
tough. I feel like I did all right over here. I like the way my team came out. I feel like I got strong options across the board. Only thing I messed up on, really, I would say, is I did this a lot last year too. Was this for whatever reason I end up getting this Tampa stack almost every time I draft, brother. Mike Evans, Godwin, not with Baker mostly, but like I always end up getting Mike Evans and Godwin just because I feel like they're valued all the time.